From Maine's first television station, WABI, this is TV5 News.
Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Maine. It's September 16, 2023. I'm Melissa Thurlow, joined by Joy Hollowell this morning. We'll be with you until 9 as TV5 will be tracking Tropical Storm Lee all day long. Before we get to the latest on Lee, here's a look at the calm before the storm, so to speak. These are a few pictures of last night's gorgeous sunset in case you missed it. Absolutely gorgeous, and it obviously didn't last very long, so we hope you caught a glimpse of it. Unfortunately, the conditions out there right now, not the greatest. The wind
not looking so pretty.
Rain picking up. No.
Are definitely beginning to deteriorate a little bit out there. And one thing to note about those pretty sunsets, there's an old saying that goes, "Pink skies at night, sailor's delight." That's not so true.
That was the confusing part.
That was
I remember
not so
all
true
saying
in
that.
this
Wait
case.
a minute,
Yeah,
right, yeah.
Typically, you see systems moving from west to east. This one is already out to our east, and it's moving northward. So that's why you saw those pretty colors last night as the sun was pretty much casting its shadow on top of it. But clearly, it's not looking so good out there. We are starting to see some of those rain bands pushing in. A few of those rain bands actually started to push onshore late last night around midnight, and now they are pushing further inland, and we still have tropical storm warnings all up and down to the coastline, even extending far into inland areas encompassing portions of central Maine down into Lewiston, Augusta, Waterville, here in Bangor, all the way up through Penobscot County, Piscataquis County, and even into portions of southern and eastern Aroostook County. So we are still looking at this system having widespread impacts away from its center. And then here's additional advisories. There is an aerial flood watch issued for portions of eastern Maine. That includes Washington, Hancock, portions of Penobscot County, and into southern Aroostook County. And then there's that coastal flood advisory through mid-coast all the way down into southern Maine. So here's a current look at Lee. He is actually a post-tropical cyclone. He is weakened a little bit, still packing a punch though. Winds of around 80 miles per hour sustained. Movement is northward at around 25 miles per hour. And then this storm is actually still over 200 miles to the south of Eastport, and we're already seeing those impacts. So you can see that those tropical storm force impacts are pretty far and widespread away from that center. It is anticipated to make landfall later today along western Nova Scotia. So that does work a little bit more in our favor, especially in terms of the rain. But right now, here's a look at some of those rain bands pushing in from southeast to northwest. We saw a few heavier pockets pushing through Bangor earlier this morning, and now another heavier band looks like it's pushing through portions of Washington and Hancock County. That is expected to continue to push northwest or northwestward as we go through the rest of this morning. Radar and the rain will continue to fill in. So here's the current track of Lee, still 80 miles per hour, moving north at 25 miles per hour, expected to make landfall somewhere right along that western tip of Nova Scotia. But like I said, those tropical storm force impacts do spread out far from that center. So it is working a little bit in our favor, especially in terms of some of that rainfall. It looks like that rain shield, or the extent of that rain shield, does cap off somewhere just to the west of Bangor by we go through today. But it does look like the hardest hit areas are still going to be across portions of down east Maine. Joy, Alyssa.
All right, Michael, thanks so much. Well, travel advisories are being issued as Hurricane Lee pushes into our state. All scheduled ferry runs for today are canceled. Normal operations are planned to resume tomorrow.
And as you can see right here, most flights in and out of Bangor International Airport are canceled for today. The same is true for Portland Jetport. The island bus service on Mount Desert Island is canceled until further notice.
Authorities are asking folks that do not need to travel today to use caution, watch out for downed trees and power lines, as well as flooding.
Well, thousands of Mainers already without power this morning.
This is the latest update from Central Maine Power and Versant Power. As winds pick up, about 3,000 customers are currently without power. That's mostly in Hancock County in the Eastbrook area. Workers will remain in the field making any necessary repairs safely and as quickly as possible. Customers are urged to stay clear again of down lines or trees in contact with them.
Now, currently, Central Maine Power only reporting about 400 customers without power. We do expect that to change, obviously, and of course, we will keep you updated throughout the rest of the morning.
And Central Maine Power and Versant Power have been tracking Lee all week, but there is only so much they can do ahead of time. And now that the storm is here, it needs to die down before they can dispatch crews.
We are anticipating that this could be a multi-day restoration. We encourage folks to have water and food on hand, as well as flashlights and batteries. Worst case scenario, I would say to prepare for about 3 days, and that is what MEMA is recommending at this time as well.
Sometimes it can take time to get our guys out there to restore because we have wind restriction limits in the bucket trucks. So we need to see wind below 35 miles per hour before we can put crews in the buckets to get them up to restore power. And that's because we need to keep our people safe.
An example would be during a storm over Christmas last year when CMP had more than 300,000 people without electricity. They tell us even the most remote location was only in the dark for 3 days.
Well, as you just saw, the storm already causing outages across the state. Those numbers are expected to rise as the day goes on. And with that, many people use generators to power their homes. If you choose to use one this weekend, be sure to be cognizant of its surroundings and upkeep. We spoke to the Bangor Fire Department about the possible dangers of generator use and how to avoid them.
So the biggest thing with generators is to want to make sure they're stayed far enough away from the house so you don't want to worry about carbon monoxide fumes coming inside the residence or whatever location. The other thing to keep in mind is you don't want to fuel them inside a closed building. So always fuel in the outdoors. You don't want to fuel inside the house. And make sure they're properly installed and tested on a regular basis before using them.
And when we're already in an emergency situation like extreme weather, you don't want another, so be aware when setting up generators.
And Maine will be given federal assistance after President Biden approved an emergency declaration for our state. That declaration allows the federal government to supplement state, local, and tribal efforts to provide emergency services. FEMA officials are coordinating at both the national and regional level to be at the ready. They say the declaration allows them to address any immediate needs that may arise once Hurricane Lee arrives.
Whether that be pre-positioning FEMA teams or providing with mass care, it just opens up the door so that the federal government can support the state and local governments.
And FEMA says Mainers should take Lee seriously and finish any last-minute preparations. You can go to ready.gov to see a full list of tips.
Well, yesterday, Governor Mills visited the state's emergency management agency. She thanked the workers for their hard work to keep Mainers prepared and safe through many storms, including Hurricane Lee. Mills says she is confident the state is well prepared for the storm as well. The governor thanked President Biden for approving a presidential emergency declaration that will give the state access to federal resources and personnel in the wake of the storm. She is encouraging everyone to check on their neighbors, follow local orders, and stay away from the coast if possible.
People out driving during a storm with heavy rains should be very, very aware of the possibility of deep water, and not to drive through water without knowing what it is and how deep it is. Don't test it. Turn around, go back home. Stay home if you can, and keep an eye on your neighbors and your family members as best you can. Outages, electrical outages, are almost inevitable in a storm with these kinds of winds. And so obviously MEMA is in touch with the utilities. They are prepared to address outages as promptly as possible.
And Mainers should be prepared with up to 3 days worth of food and medicine if they can. Now, that is typically the amount of time before people can get access to resources.
And the city of Bangor has plans in place to ensure the safety of all residents. Public Works will be staffed 24 hours per day during the storm and will be clearing debris from streets as necessary to facilitate power restoration and traffic flow. Now, the Parks and Recreation Department will open its doors as a temporary shelter charging station should the city be without power for an extended period of time. Also, a number of shelters will be open today to assist those who may be experiencing homelessness. The Brick Church on Union Street will be open through Sunday at 11 a.m. They are accepting donations of snacks, coffee, and other items.
The Bangor Area Homeless Shelter on Main Street will be open starting at 6 p.m. tonight, and they'll stay open through Sunday morning at 5:30 a.m. The Hope House on Corporate Drive is open tonight from 7 p.m. to 8 a.m. on Sunday.
And the Bangor Public Library on Harlow Street will be open today from 10 to 5. And Mansion Church on Center Street will be open today from 8 to 8 p.m.
We should mention the City of Augusta is opening a shelter at the Augusta Civic Center today from 6 until 8. And in Sullivan, the Rec Center will be open today from 10 a.m. until 4. Well, it is now 6:09. As this storm makes its way to Maine, we want you to take a look at this.
This was in Halifax, Nova Scotia, a little earlier this morning. As you can see, the waves crashing in there. Michael will have the latest track on Lee coming up in his full first alert forecast right after this.
And watching Moscow always get the mule. Vodka this good is an American jewel. Wheatley is so good, I drink it neatly.
The award-winning food documentary series Food Curated is now streaming on your favorite device. Follow creator Liza DeGia as she shares inspiring stories of people and the food they love. Catch the top-rated series available anytime, anywhere, right here on View It.
Power Nation, America's most watched automotive how-to programming, is now available anytime, anywhere, on any device with ViewIt.com and the View It app. Enjoy popular titles like Engine Power, Truck Tech, and Detroit Muscle in an always-on stream, or pick your favorite show to watch. Join automotive enthusiasts across the nation today at ViewIt.com or the View It app for your favorite device.
Stream free, live, local news, and video on demand on View It, all from the comfort of your couch. Available for Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire TV. Download it from your favorite app store today. Stream free, live, local news, and video on demand on View It, all from the comfort of your couch. Available for Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire TV. Download it from your favorite app store today.
Well, Lee is right on our doorsteps here. It is slowly moving into the Gulf of Maine as it expected to make landfall across portions of western Nova Scotia. It is a post-tropical storm at this point, but still packing quite a punch here. We're looking at winds sustained at around 80 miles per hour at the center, moving northward at around 25 miles per hour. And as it moves northward, it's still going to enter those cooler waters, so it's going to expect to weaken further, and eventually, as it moves out into the Maritimes, it is expected to, still remain a post-tropical cyclone and eventually fizzle out by the time we get into tomorrow. But regardless of the fact that that center is going to be tracking across western Nova Scotia, we still feel those tropical storm impacts very far away from that center. So here's a look at our current sustained wind speeds. We're looking at sustained wind speeds anywhere between 15 all the way up to 30 miles per hour across the state. Sustained winds of around 25 here in Bangor, 18 down towards Bar Harbor. And now in terms of our gusts, we're seeing gusts potentially even up to 40 miles per hour right along the immediate coastline there for Washington County, upwards of 31 miles per hour here, there in Bar Harbor, and 33 here in Bangor. And they are out of the north, will eventually be shifting from north to northeast. And current wave heights, we're starting to see those waves build a bit here out towards more out in the ocean. We're looking at wave heights anywhere between 10 to 15 feet, but closer to the coastline, we're looking at waves right now of around 5 to 8 feet, and those waves are expected to increase as the storm moves closer. So here's a look at our future radar here. We're continuing to see those rain bands making their way in from southeast to northwest. Some of those heavier pockets are expected to be across portions of Washington and Hancock County, and as I mentioned before, that center of the storm is shifting further to the east, so that is going to impact our rain totals here. So the extent of that rain shield by the time we get into this afternoon looks like it doesn't make it far past Bangor. After you head further west, it doesn't look like that rain really makes it into central Maine and into southern Maine through the afternoon, but really it is focusing its target on down East Maine. So that's where we're expecting the greatest impacts out of this system. And the good news is it does move pretty quickly. So this storm is going to exit off to the north and east. As it does so, we're going to start to see those rain showers tapering off by late this afternoon and into the early evening hours, at least for Bangor, and then it's going to linger on across portions of western or eastern Maine, far eastern Maine, through earlier on this evening and into tonight. And then by the time we get into late tonight, it does look like most of the rainfall has ended there. We're still going to be looking at some pretty gusty winds through tonight and even into tomorrow morning, but the sun does come back out by the time most of us wake up for tomorrow, almost as if nothing happened. So, as I mentioned before, that rain shield does look like it isn't going to make it far past or farther west than Bangor. So we're still going for around 1 to 2 inches here in Bangor, possibly even all the way up into Millinocket and into northeastern Maine. Then really focusing in on Hancock, especially Washington County, where you're still looking at 2 to 4 inches, with pockets possibly even exceeding that up to 5 or possibly even 6 inches in some spots. But here's our sustained wind speed, our future sustained wind speeds. Again, right now we're looking at sustained winds of anywhere between 15 to 30 miles per hour, but as we go through our day, it is expected to see those winds increase, especially along the coastline, sustained anywhere from 30 to 40 miles per hour, inland anywhere from 15 to 30 miles per hour. And as we go through the afternoon, I do think that's going to be the height of the storm late this morning through the early afternoon, eventually tapering off by the time we get into earlier on this evening. And these are just sustained wind speeds. Our wind gusts, we're still thinking we could see gusts as high as 50 to 65 miles per hour for coastal down east locations. And then as you head further inland, a little bit weaker, but still potent, 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts expected through Bangor all the way down into mid-coast. And as you head further to the north and west, you're seeing less, up to 40. However, if you are in those higher elevations, you still could see those gusts up to 45 miles per hour. And then as we get into this afternoon, those wave heights could be increasing anywhere between 15 to 25 feet. So that's going to really splash up along the coastline, cause some coastal erosion, and especially some coastal flooding. And then so as we go through the rest of our week, we're looking at Sunday, clearing out. Monday, we still have a few showers that'll move through along a frontal boundary, and then high pressure builds in for the rest of the work week, so sunshine does return by Wednesday and Thursday.
Right. Good to see some sunshine on that 7-day.
It's like it never happened.
I know, right?
We just really have to get through today.
Right, yeah, good point on that one. And of course, for the latest on Hurricane Lee, make sure you download our TV5 app.
Yes, there you will find the latest on the storm and the latest on the news as well.
And we are certainly keeping that up to date, especially today. And still ahead, why the U.S. economy is facing another headache.
Plus, low wages, volatile markets, and unpredictable yields. We got one farming family's fight for survival. These stories and more as Saturday Morning Maine continues.
And Wash in Moscow always get the mule. Vodka this good is an American jewel. Wheatley, so good I drink it neatly.
Well, you can likely thank an American farmer from everything from food on your table to gas in your tank.
But the number of small family farms is shrinking. Part of the reason those who run these green operations often find themselves in the red.
Our Molly Martinez shows us one family farm's fight for survival.
Well, I've lived here my whole life. I'll be 70 next winter.
Craig Mold takes meticulous care in planting and plowing his 800-acre farm. This year's harvest is corn and soybean, but his family has been farming this land since the 1880s. However, his generation might be the last.
The average age of the farmer is about my age, and with no one coming behind them, another generation that's not going to come behind them in the family, I think you're going to see a major consolidation.
Increasingly, small family farms are being snatched up by industrial producers. One reason, it's too hard to turn a profit. According to the USDA, in 2021, 51% of all farms had less than $10,000 in sales. Mold tells me some years he only nets about $4 in profit per acre. That, plus there's an exorbitant cost for staying operational.
If you have to buy, say, a combine, a harvester or something, a new combine with 2 heads on it will set you back almost $1 million.
Indeed.com found that the average farmer salary in the U.S. is just $38,000 per year. While Mold is hopeful he can sustain their operation, he's not betting the family farm.
One thing is your heart's got to be in it if you're going to do it, because it's not a 9-to-5 day job where you can say, I'm done on the weekend. You're here all the time.
In Rush City, Minnesota, I'm Molly Martinez. And still ahead, Michael will be back for another look at Tropical Storm Lee.
Plus, how a state representative and his wife are helping students in central Maine as they head back to school. We'll have that story when Saturday Morning Maine continues.
And a wash in Moscow always get the mule. Vodka this good is an American jewel. Wheatley, so good I drink it neatly.
Okay, Michael, back with us now to give us an update on post-tropical storm Lee.
Yes, post-tropical storm. In technical terms, it no longer holds those tropical characteristics, but still packing quite a punch of sustained winds. Still a big, massive storm with pretty gusty winds, 80 miles per hour sustained right around that center of low pressure. It is going to continue to weaken, though, as we go through the rest of our morning here as it enters those cooler waters. It is moving north at 25 miles per hour here, and here's a closer look. Here's a look at what our radar is doing. It's starting to fill in with those rain bands moving in from southeast to northwest. A couple of heavier pockets of rain moving through portions of northern Hancock and into central Washington County. I do think the worst of this storm is definitely going to be for down east Maine, especially as we get into the rest of this morning and into the afternoon. So here's that track. Again, it is expected to make landfall right along that western tip of Nova Scotia. However, those tropical storm force impacts do spread over hundreds of miles out from that center. So even though it is out to our east, and that still benefits us a little bit in some ways, especially with that rainfall shield, again, we're still looking at the impact being highest across Washington and Hancock County, moderate through much of the state, much of the inland areas through Bangor, Millinocket, Holton, all the way down into central Maine, Augusta and Waterville, and lower, of course, as you get further and further away from that center. But still, we could be talking about potential impacts being 15 to 30 mile per hour sustained winds for inland locations, gust up to 50 and gust up to 50 to 65 miles per hour along the coast. Joy, Alyssa.
And of course, as Mainers do ride out the storm, we at TV5 would appreciate you showing us what you're experiencing today.
Absolutely. To send us your photos, you can open your app or our website and click on Submit Photos and Video.
Click on your weather and nature and then upload your content.
Well, students at Winthrop Grade School will no longer suffer in the heat, thanks to a state representative.
Talia Clark introduces us to the couple responsible and the grateful school staff.
I feel very fortunate and very blessed.
The temperature is starting to cool off after a sweltering start to September, just as kids were heading back to school. Winthrop Grade School only has air conditioning in half of their building. State Representative of Winthrop and Reedfield, Tavis Zemfis, and his wife, Nicole, noticed how warm it was in their child's classroom.
My wife had the idea. She said, I think we should get an air conditioner for our daughter's classroom.
The couple realized it was only fair for all students to have equal opportunity at a comfortable learning environment. They ended up purchasing 14 ACs for the school.
I think behind every great school is a great community, and I'd like to thank, Joel Stone and the administrative staff, as well as Dave's Appliance and the janitors who I'm sure worked extra hours to get things done very quickly.
Staff tell me the AC units also make great dehumidifiers. The superintendent says he's happy students and staff will have cool air at the end of the school year when the temperature kicks up again.
The kids will be very comfortable, and hopefully that'll help with learning.
That was Talia Clark reporting. I don't know if they're really going to need the ACs much in the next few days.
Good to know for later on.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Well, our Saturday morning coverage of Tropical Storm Lee will continue right after the break. Stay with us.
And watching Moscow always get the mule. Vodka this good is an American jewel. Wheat Lee, so good I drink it neatly.
from Maine's first television station, WABI, this is TV5 News.
Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Maine. It's September 16, 2023. I'm Melissa Thurlow, joined by Joy Hollowell this morning. We'll be with you until 9 as TV5 will be tracking post-tropical storm Lee all day long. Before we get to the latest on the storm, here's a look at our Bar Harbor webcam right now. As you can see, it's a little dreary out there this morning. Yeah.
And that is a boat out there.
There is a boat out there.
Okay, I know we were telling Michael earlier. I think that's a boat.
Oh, there we go.
That's a boat. Yeah.
It was closer in picture earlier, so we were concerned.
Right. We were very concerned because I would not want to be in a boat right now out on the water, and maybe inshore, but out on the water right now.
Yeah, so definitely those waves are going to continue to increase in height as we go through our morning, especially by this afternoon. We could be looking at wave heights of around 15 to 20 feet.
No thanks.
Crashing into the coastline. That's going to cause a bunch of coastal flooding, coastal erosion, lots of problems for the down east coastline today. But let's take a current look at what Lee is doing. Right now, it is a post-tropical cyclone. Winds still packing a punch, though. 80 miles per hour sustained at the center of that storm. And it's continuing to move northward at around 25 miles per hour. It's still over 200 miles to the south of Eastport as of this morning. So we're feeling impacts far away from that center and is expected to make landfall somewhere along that western tip of Nova Scotia. So here's a look at our current radar. You can see some of those very first bands beginning to rotate in from southeast to northwest. Some heavier pockets of rain there moving through portions of Hancock and into Washington County. And it looks like another heavier band is beginning to set up and push onshore to the down east coastline in the next couple of minutes or so. But rain will continue to fill in across the state. However, due to its eastward track, it does look like a lot of that rain is eventually going to shut off right to the west of Bangor as we get into the height of this storm. But wind gusts still gusting up there, gusting up to 40 miles per hour here in Bangor as of latest, 31 miles per hour down towards Bar Harbor and even higher, 40 to possibly even 50 miles per hour right now, gusting up towards the coastline there in Washington County where you see those purple. So definitely feeling some of those tropical storm force gusts, even though it is still very far away, and it's only expected to get closer as it eventually makes landfall on that western tip. It's going to weaken, though. It's going to continue to weaken due to those cooler waters of the Gulf of Maine, and eventually it's going to accelerate after it moves into the Canadian Maritimes and continue to weaken as it pushes to our north and east. So here's a look at our impact map. We're looking at the highest impact still being across down east Maine, Hancock, and Washington County, especially along the coastline. A little bit less as you head further inland away from the center of that storm. So Bangor, Millinocket, Holton, Waterville, Augusta looking at moderate impacts, and then lesser across western and northwestern Maine. So here's what is expected. 15 to 30 mile per hour sustained winds for inland locations. Gusts up to 50 mile per hour are possible. Rainfall rate or rainfall accumulations of around 1 to 2 inches, at least through the Bangor area. Again, it shuts off pretty quickly just to the west of Bangor, and then along the coastline, much worse. 50 to 65 mile per hour gusts possible, 2 to 4 inches, pockets of even higher amounts possible, especially into Washington County. Storm surge, erosion, high surf and flooding, and of course, power outages are all very likely. Joy, Alyssa.
All right, Michael, thank you. Well, Hurricane Lee is expected to make landfall later today with millions of people from New England to Canada currently under storm watches and warnings.
We're hearing that rain on our roof as we speak. Christian Benavidez reports.
After lashing parts of Bermuda, Lee is now barreling across the North Atlantic, and those who live along New England's coast are bracing for the effects of the storm. Lance Kennedy is a lobsterman in Maine.
I've taken up half my traps and shifted the other half inside into Pigeon Hill Bay, hoping for some cover while this hurricane hits.
Boatyard workers have been pulling boats out of the water.
It's been wicked busy. We've moved about 140 boats in the past 5 days. We've done basically 6 weeks of work in 5 days.
With high tide expected around noon in parts of Maine, residents too are bracing for impact.
We put the boat away, and I'm going to put my roadster out back and cover that over the top and, put away the furniture and just batten down the hatches, really.
Maine's Governor Janet Mills said she's been in contact with FEMA, which is on standby ready to assist after the storm.
We're concerned about tree damage on human beings, on cars, on houses, across roads, and flooding.
Lee has already created rough surf and the potential for dangerous riptides from New England all the way down to New Jersey. Prepping is also underway in Canada, where the storm is expected to make landfall. Cristian Benavides, CBS News.
Well, 2 men and a dog were rescued from a sailboat that capsized in the Kennebec River last night. Bath emergency crews say thankfully no one was hurt other than being cold from being in the water. The men were treated and released at the scene.
Officials say the cause of the incident was human error and river conditions. The men were not wearing life jackets at the time of that rescue.
Well, coastal businesses took advantage of the calm before the storm yesterday. In Steuben, lobstermen were ensuring their traps, buoys, and boats are safe and secure. We talked to a 16-year-old lobsterman to see how he's preparing.
I've taken up half my traps and shifted the other half inside into Pigeon Hill Bay, hoping for some cover. I've taken up 120 in the last 3 days, but I still have 120 out there right now. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I haven't been fishing too long, but I've been fishing long enough to know that 70, 80 mile an hour winds in here, 20, 25 foot seas is not going to be very good.
And Lance artistically adds the incoming storm is just the cherry on top of an already wet, rainy summer season. And he is absolutely right on that. Bring it on,
yes,
right?
We're going to need that sunshine this week.
Yes, no doubt about that. Maybe some warm as well. Yeah, well, it's now 6:38. Of course, the winds are picking up this morning.
Yes, it is. And we are seeing some tree damage across parts of our state. We will keep you updated on post-tropical storm Lee as the morning continues. We'll be right back.
And watching Moscow always get the mule. Vodka this good is an American jewel. Wheatley, so good I drink it neatly.
Welcome to Ask Me, where Maine experts share their expertise with us.
My name is Vinny Musichko. I am a realtor with Scott Harding & Associates. We're powered by EXP, and we're here to help you with all your real estate needs. So the real estate market today is a little different than we've seen in the past, say, 3 years. It's a little more work to sell a home, even though we are still very inventory short. Buyers are looking at large quantities of homes before making a decision. And it's not the first thing that comes to mind anymore. The reason for that is today's high interest rates. There's many ways for a buyer to combat said high interest rates, but one of the biggest is going with a government-backed loan, such as an FHA loan, a VA loan, a rural development loan, which most of these require little to no money down, and nobody knows they exist. But one of the big common factors that all of these loans have is they don't allow for any peeling paint on said property. So for sellers, my biggest tip right now is if you have peeling paint or any sort of deterioration on the outside, that would be a somewhat simple fix, even if it's not. By fixing that before listing your home on the market, you're going to get an opportunity at a buyer that, or multiple buyers, I should say, that are going to be more interested in your property because your house has something that most others don't that qualify it for these programs, bringing more buyers to your property that want to be there. Home staging is very important in any sort of light because that first presentation that your property gets online, whether that's through Zillow, on Facebook, or somebody just driving down the road, that's what's going to last. First impressions always last, and we want to put our best foot forward at all times. So staging is a huge part of that, interior and exterior. Today's real estate market can be very intimidating and very challenging. So if you're thinking of buying or selling, give me a call today so that I can help you be set up to make the most out of your next real estate transaction.
In Moscow always get the mule. Vodka this good is an American jewel. Wheatley, so good I drink it neatly.
Well, today is the day we've all been waiting for. Hurricane or post-tropical storm, Lee, I should say rather, is right about knocking on our doorsteps now. Current advisories from the National Hurricane Center has it as a post-tropical storm. Now, that doesn't mean it's still not very impactful. It's still packing winds of up to 80 miles per hour sustained right around the center of circulation. It is moving northward at around 25 miles per hour, and it's still over 200 miles away or south of Eastport, and we're already starting to feel those effects, and it is expected to make landfall across portions of western Nova Scotia. But here is a look, or a closer look here. We have a few heavier or moderate bands moving through the Bangor region, and they'll continue to push into the west and northwest, filling in from southeast. There is a heavier band of rain that is looking like it is starting to build right along the down east coastline, down east or coastal Washington County, about to encounter some of those heavier rainfall amounts in the next several several minutes or so. So here's a look at radar estimated rainfall. We've already seen around an inch of rain fallen over the last 12 hours right along the coast where those bands started to move on shore just after midnight, and we'll continue to see rain bands rotating in throughout the entire day today. I think the heaviest rainfall amounts are going to be seen, or heaviest rates are going to be from mid to late morning and through the first part of the afternoon. So here's a look at our current sustained wind speeds. So we're sustained at around 23 miles per hour here in Bangor and down towards Bar Harbor, possibly even sustained up to 30 right along the immediate coastline there in Washington County. As you head further away from the coast, those winds are a bit lighter out there, 15 miles per hour sustained up towards Greenville. And here's a look at our current gusts. We're looking at a gust recorded in Bangor of around 41 miles per hour, 31 down towards the coast there in Bar Harbor. And I think also seeing gusts near 40 miles per hour right along that coastline on Washington County, as they are going to be the closest to the center of the storm. Wave heights are going to continue to build. Right now they're around 5 to 8 feet along the coastline, but I think as we get into this afternoon, we'll start to see those wave heights increasing to around 15 to 20 feet, especially during high tide, where that's going to be expected around 12:21 this afternoon. So here's a look at our future radar. Again, those rain bands will continue to rotate in from southeast to northwest. I think the heaviest rains are going to start to move in late this morning and into this afternoon, really focusing those heavier rain bands across portions of Hancock and Washington County. And I think by this afternoon, as the storm really starts to make landfall into Nova Scotia, we'll see that precipitation shield shut off pretty quickly as soon as you get west of Bangor. So I think into portions of central Maine and down into southern and western Maine, I don't think you're going to see much rain past those bands that are currently moving through this morning. So that tapers our rainfall amounts pretty starkly just outside of Bangor, but still looking at pretty heavy accumulation across portions of down east Maine. And that storm will continue to push off to the northeast into the Canadian Maritimes as we go through this evening. Rain will be tapering off from southwest to northeast late this afternoon and into the evening hours, eventually completely clear of the rain by the time we get into late tonight by 11 p.m. And then by the time we wake up tomorrow morning, we're going to wake up to some sunshine for most of us, maybe a few clouds, possibly a few straggling showers across far eastern Maine, but it is going to turn out to be a pretty nice day across the state for tomorrow. But here's a look at our updated rainfall forecast. So reflecting that, thinking that the coastal Hancock and Washington County are going to be the hardest hit with this rainfall. So 2 to 4 inches plus, we could easily see pockets exceeding 4 inches in this area. But as you head further away from that, it does taper off pretty quickly here. So Bangor, we're still looking at around 1 to 2 inches possible all the way up towards Millinocket and Holton. And then as you head further west of Bangor, it tapers off pretty quickly. So less than an inch is expected out towards central Maine into Augusta and Lewiston. Here's a look at your next 7 days. Again, first alert today. Tomorrow, we have that sunshine returning full force across the state. However, it's still going to be a little bit gusty out there. And then as we get into the beginning of the work week, Monday and Tuesday, it looks like we have a frontal system bringing some more showers and then clearing out for the rest of the work week next week. Joy, Alyssa.
All right. Thank you, Michael, for that. And of course, we are continuing to constantly update and check. And I appreciate Alyssa doing that as we speak right now, as Michael's giving us the forecast. It is now 6:49.
Yes, and we will have high school sports highlights, football action last night. We'll have that coming up in sports right after this.
The Wash in Moscow always get the mule. Vodka this good is an American jewel. Wheatley is so good, I drink it neatly.
We could tell you all about the wonders that await you at the Tennessee Aquarium, but honestly, words wouldn't do them justice. They couldn't begin to capture the beauty of the Southeast's underwater rainforest, and nothing can compare to getting up close and personal with its remarkable inhabitants. But if we had to describe the feeling, it would be... whoa! Come see for yourself at the Tennessee Aquarium's new Ridges to Rivers Gallery and experience a world of endless adventures. Plan your next visit at tnaqua.org.
another edition of First and Five. And Connor, it's a great way to get it started with your alma mater.
It is indeed. That's why I got out the blue tie today, actually.
Absolutely, yes. No better way. There was a fun cross-class matchup in Dover. Foxcroft, that's where we are. Foxcroft Academy homecoming at the Ponies facing the Herman Hawks. Herman quarterback Bruce Coulter running for his life. Fumble. Ponies take over at the Hawks 12. FA makes them pay. Gage Beaudry punches it in. Touchdown. It's all Ponies 48-0 over the Hawks.
Bucks Sport coming out with the legendary coach Joel Sankey, who was honored tonight, winning as coach in school history. Bucks up 7-0. Aidan McGuire drops one back to pass. He finds Connor Fitch. The Golden Bucks have a field day, 57-0 over the Mustangs.
Bangor Rams welcoming the Skowhegan Riverhawks to Cameron Stadium. Bangor not resting with a second-half lead. Rams rip it away. Only the sideline stops the turnover. Skowhegan showing up to stop the Rams early in the next drive, but ultimately the Rams kept churning in it. Jackson Varney has the first down on the ground. Tough running, and then on a fourth down in tight, Jack Shook on the run, surveying and finding Damon Muscala for 6. The Rams run away from the Riverhawks 42-0.
Guys, Brewer taking on Madomic Valley now near halftime, and it's 7-0 Panthers. They give it to Aaron Reed, and oh my goodness, he finds the lane and no one is going to stop him. Ben, I am a grown man, and there's no way I'd ever want to try and line up and try and tackle him. It's the Panthers over the Witches with a final score of 30-6.
Orno fans decked out in Hawaiian shirts for the game against Ellsworth. Jack Brewer connects to Sal Wise, breaking free of the defense to find his way to the end zone. They defeat the Eagles 64-6.
8-man football. Morse at Waterville second quarter. It's scoreless. Morse with a 3rd and 9. And Kalen Gould goes 59 yards into Waterville territory. Now storming downfield, they're finally able to push him out of bounds. But 2 plays later, Gould goes in for the score, and Morse takes an 8-0 lead. Now Waterville's next possession, Ben Foster with the short touchdown run. That's going to tie it at 8, but Morse sneaks past Waterville 16-14.
That's impressive against that defense. Dexter Tigers fired up to host Holton. Opening Shire's drive, Isaiah Irvin takes off, and he's not stopped until the red zone, so they are threatening now, that's for sure. But now he's looking end zone. Bronson Hanning hauls it in for the touchdown.
Snag.
Yeah, Isaiah calls his own number then for 2, but then Will Spratt responds with a return to the Holton 40, and then he connects with Cody Kimball on the sideline. Spratt just doing it all early in this one. Wow. Blaine Gold finds him over the middle for the touchdown. Holton, though, wins a shootout 52-38 over the Tigers.
Got some great catches in that one. My goodness. Maine taking on Rhode Island for the home opener. Black Bears up in the first quarter, but not anymore. Kissim Hillar mails it to Kataro Summers for 6. Rhode Island up 10-7. However, Maine responds. Tristan Keenan breaks his second rushing touchdown of the night. But Ben, that Hill to Summers connection, well, it's going to answer once again. The Rams back in front. Rhode Island doubles up the Black Bears 34-17.
Here's the big board in high school football. W's go to Messalonsky, Gardner, Oceanside, Lawrence, Camden Hills, Mount Ararat, Hyde, Stern, Skank, and Maranacoke. Belfast also defeated Old Town 14-7. And meanwhile, soccer winners were Caribou, Narraguagus, Ellsworth, Dexter, Mount Ararat, Penquist Valley, and Waterville. In field hockey, Belfast, Gardner, Halldale, Coney, and Maine all got it done. Colby volleyball swept Connecticut College. And finally, in golf, MCI took care of Lawrence. That's all for sports this morning. Have a great day.
It is now 6:56. Our coverage of post-tropical storm Lee continues.
Todd will join us right after the break.
And Wash in Moscow always get the mule. Vodka this good is an American jewel. Wheatley is so good, I drink it neatly.